Good afternoon, everyone. Glad that everyone could attend the Stormwater and Flood Resiliency Master Plan. We're going to be going over some things tonight that is specifically related to this area, District 2. And Mrs. Jelinek is going to facilitate this meeting. So, with that, we'll call it to order.
Good evening, everyone. How are you doing this evening? So my name is Priscilla Sigalnik. I'm the Director for Environmental Services. And tonight, what we're here to present is our master plan. Now, I'll tell you, our master plan document itself is a 1,000-page document. So we're going to give a brief overview of the major key points of the master plan. And then we want to talk to you about specific projects that are of interest to you in District 2. Also tonight, what we'd like to hear back from you are those areas of concern that you have. We want to make sure we have a record of all of the flooding concerns that the community has to make sure that that ends up being part of our document. This is a living document. It's going to be updated periodically to include areas of concern and hopefully areas that we've remediated over time. So really the impetus tonight is to learn about what your concerns are, try to gauge the priorities, and make sure that we're serving the public with the greatest benefit. So with that, I'm going to turn over to our consultants who have prepared the document. They're going to take you through their process in building this document and talk to us a little bit about some of the deficiencies we have in the city and areas for concern and what we need to be thinking about moving into the future and programming our capital wisely. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Mark Ellard, who is our consultant who's prepared this document. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Priscilla. And what we're going to do is, as mentioned, give an overview of what the elements, just making sure we're on the same page with what a stormwater master plan means and does. So we're going to split this up a little bit. Alec Bogdanoff, who's one of our consultant partners on this project, is going to give an overview and a bit of an education, just make sure we're all on the same page with stormwater, what it means and why we're doing this master plan. So I'll turn it over to him, and then I'll come back and provide some details on what we've done and the project we're looking at for District 2.
Thanks, Mark, and thank you all for coming out today. We talk a lot about flooding, and we're going to talk about sea level rise and what it means, but an important part of actually building resilience in a community is getting the people involved in the process. Cities are here to serve their residents, and so thank you for coming out today, for sharing your input and learning about the work that Deerfield is doing. So we're going to talk about how we got here, why we actually need a stormwater plan, what the purpose is, what we've accomplished to date, where we're going, and of course, introduce us a little bit. So first, on April 11th in 2018, the city passed an ordinance to create a stormwater management program and a utility fund. So what this means is basically there's a fee that is paid by residents. This will ultimately fund the operations, the maintenance, and capital improvement projects related to stormwater. And so this is an important first step in really prioritizing this flood defense system. So we often forget about the stormwater system, but it is actually the primary flood defense for your community. It's really where the most money is spent on making sure that homes don't flood due to rain events. And so ultimately, as I said, this was created to construct, improve, and maintain the city's stormwater system. The aging infrastructure in Deerfield Beach is not unique. Most of our communities were built 50, 60, 70 years ago, and a lot of that infrastructure is past its lifetime. And so there's a lot of deferred maintenance out there across South Florida, across the country we hear about. And so ultimately, by creating this utility, by creating this plan, it's really a positive step forward for this community in addressing the challenges of making sure that the streets and homes are as dry as much as possible. And so right since the inception of the fund, there's been over $1 million in capital projects. So why do you need a plan to begin with? Well, it's a little like, I guess for those of us who used to print out maps, right? Printing out a map and taking it with you. And so ultimately you want to make sure that you understand where you want to go as a city. You don't want to build one project that solves one problem when you could potentially build a little bit bigger of a project that solves multiple problems. And so this is one of the benefits of doing this planning process, is that we can think through what is the best value for the city and its residents in terms of reducing the flooding on roadways and ultimately making sure homes and businesses don't flood. And again, we talked about the aged and diminished capacity of the system. There are pipes that are smaller than we would hope they would be, and then some pipes that are a little older than they ought to be. Ultimately, we want to make sure that public health, safety, and welfare that is protected, that people are not flooding. This is of utmost importance for the city. And ultimately, the city is what's called a co-permittee on a MS4 permit. So it's a regulatory permit provided by ultimately the Department of Environmental Protection under the Clean Water Act, and it allows the city to discharge water from rain in the stormwater system ultimately out to our water systems like the intercoastal and the ocean. So we want to make sure that water is as clean as possible. And that's actually one of the biggest challenges. We'll talk a lot about this. Yes, we talk a lot about flooding, but we're going to talk about water quality as well, because the water quality portions can actually be more complex than solving the flooding issues. And then ultimately, we want to make sure that when we can, we look at the National Flood Insurance Program, improve the community rating system credits, and reduce flood insurance rates for the entire community. So there's a benefit in place where if we do enough, we can actually reduce the flood insurance rates for the entire community. And this can be a huge value to the residents. And of course, we want to prioritize that available funding to make sure that it benefits as many people as possible in the most effective way possible. So where are we? Well, we talked about that the utility was already initiated. This is a great first step. This program is going to fund maintenance personnel, equipment, material, and capital planning and projects. It's dedicated funding just for stormwater. So this master planning effort was started in October of 2019. We saw you all in November of 2020 with our initial public meetings. Again, these are our final meetings to share with results with you. Ultimately, the city did receive a FEMA Flood Mitigation Assistance Fund, and this is going to help design a critical project in each of the districts. So this is a great step forward. Today, we're here to receive public input, show the completed plan, almost completed plan, and then we're going to continue to seek grant funds and program improvements. This is the perfect time to be finishing a stormwater master plan. There's a lot of money available on a state and federal level. And so making sure that we leverage that utility money and bring as much money back from the state and federal government as possible. And so it is my pleasure. I'm going to pass it over to Mark, and he's going to walk through the workshop objectives in a bit more detail on the stormwater master plan.
Yep. And I get to take the mask off here for a little while. So thanks, Alec. So what we're here to do is talk about the master plan, give it an introduction and overview of what that is, but really talk about the results, what it means to the community, the citizens, the particular projects that are being programmed. Also learn about the next steps. As we said, we're kind of at the tail end of this, but there are some next steps that include getting further input from the public and the commissioners and the folks that are involved and impacted by this study. Now, make sure we're on the same page. What is a stormwater system? When we talk about this, these are designed to move rainwater. The stormwater hits the land, and it can cause problems, cause flooding. It can cause erosion. So stormwater systems in the city, are made to collect this and get it safely to a receiving water body. A lot of the city ends up in the Hillsborough River or out into the intercoastal. And there's a lot of ways that the water goes through pipes or systems of lakes, even canals, or sometimes is just infiltrated into the ground right where it is. So these are infrastructure, stormwater infrastructure that needs to be maintained and operate properly for those things to work, keep the areas flood free and improve the water quality. So there's a number of things that go into this idea of the stormwater and flood resiliency plan. Flood management, water quality improvement, as was talked about. Now, water quality improvement is interesting. When rain falls, it not only causes issues with flooding, it also can pick up pollutants from the ground, from roads, can pick up oils and metals, even nutrients from fertilizers or other things. And those things can impact the water bodies that they go into. So when we talk about water quality, it's a little more subtle, and a little bit more complex, as Alec mentioned, but nevertheless, we need to address it fairly well. But there's a lot of other elements that work into this idea of the master plan. Sea level rise, there's projections for the sea level to rise. And when that happens, the tailwater rises. And so these outfalls that have the water that's trying to get out to the intercoastal or the Hillsborough River, it's more constrained, has to fight harder to get out. Information is important, like topography, the elevations of the land surface that it impact the way stormwater runs off in the areas. Other factors that we look at are things like land use. Different types of land uses respond differently to rainstorms. The completely paved shopping center is going to generate a lot more runoff from that rainstorm than a park. That's completely pervious. Floodplains are an issue. There's a lot of floodplains delineated in this city, as there are many coastal areas, and a number of regulations and other environmental issues that are all kind of wrapped in together into this plan. So we're going to talk a little bit more about the specific elements of the plan that address those. Now, we talked a bit about, it's more about the challenges. The coastal areas particular challenge with if things change in the future and increase, then those issues can be exacerbated. We also have the challenge, as it was alluded to, with aging infrastructure. There's a lot of areas in the city, particularly on the east side, particularly in this district, that have been around for 30, 40, 50 years and built. And the infrastructure that was put in way long ago is not the same. We've learned a lot in the past decades about infrastructure. And so some of its aging needs to be replaced. It's coming to its natural service life. And so with these elements, with these things that are potentially happening, the impacts from rainfall, exacerbated with some tidal flooding, can be particular challenges that we need to address by this. So now we're going to talk in a bit, get into the plan. We're going to give an introduction. Now, the idea of a plan is to have this roadmap of the future. The city needs to know how to maintain its system, how to do projects, do activities, do maintenance and operations to be able to be proactive in the way they maintain the system moving forward in the future. And this plan provides that. It looks at the flooding, it looks at the water quality, it looks at the coastal resources, and identifies problems, not only based on what we knew in the past, but also present, and then what may happen in the future. And in this way, it can focus on developing a program of capital improvements, projects, or programs, or other measures to be able to make things better and have the stormwater be managed better for the benefit of the citizens in the city. So I'm going to step through there's really 5 main elements that I cover with the master plan, and talk a little bit more in detail and give you a sense of what we looked at, the data we had to use, and how we're using that to move forward. First is the flooding assessment. And this is the thing, as we talk about, everybody really sees every day. Actually, this morning, there's a heavy rainstorm, and if you're driving around this morning, I saw a lot of puddles and a lot of little areas where the rainwater is accumulating as it's working its way through the system. So when we look at the flooding assessment, we start, as I said, to look at both past, the present, and the future. In the past, we compile a record of complaints, areas where citizens have called in and said, hey, there's flooding I see in my property or down the street, or I had to drive through to go to work. Compile all the data for the last several years. In addition to that, there's a lot of flooding complaint areas that the county or the city knows that have been compiled, chronic areas that they have to respond to quite a bit. That's pulled together into problem areas. Then we do something that is a useful assessment tool. We create a computer model, computer simulation, a hydrological and hydraulic model. And what that does is it provides a computer simulation of the drainage infrastructure that's throughout the city and the primary drainage ways. And we're able to evaluate those and perform what we call a level of service analysis. And by that, what I mean is when you design a storm inlet or a storm pipe that conveys water, it's designed from an engineering standpoint to convey a certain storm event, like a 25-year storm event for a lot of storm sewer. You heard a lot about 100-year storm events possibly associated with floodplains or flooding or structure impacts. So these are all criteria by which different infrastructure are designed. So we look at that, we simulate what happens when these rainfall, when these storms happen, and how well these systems can manage those storms, and see whether things are meeting their level of service or not. Now, we also look at that, what's happening now, the existing conditions of what's going on. But we also look in the future. There's, like I said, the impacts, what may happen if the sea level rise does rise, what may happen if other changes from that, like more intense or more rainfall happen. We're able to do some model simulations that kind of predict what might happen there. And that also helps to point towards some potential impacts of things to do, infrastructure to improve. So all this pulls together and provides the basis for capital improvement recommendations, see where the areas that are being stressed or having problems now, and be able to try to point in an organized manner in this plan to move forward. with addressing them. Now, I'll give you a little some pictures of an idea what from this data that I talked about looks like. Here on the left-hand side is a map of the city, and you see some orange areas and some purple areas. The purple areas, small lines, are areas that the city has identified as chronic flooding areas. And those were put into what we looked at. But the orange areas are where citizens have called in flooding complaints in various areas throughout the city. And you see some are little dots are points, and some are streets, and some are actually areas of the city. Again, all that is compiled so we can look and see where we may want to focus some efforts in looking at both confirming problems, but also looking at solutions. On the right, this is an important graphic we put in there, just to give you a sense of how much information, how much drainage infrastructure is out there. One of the most important things of the master plan is just knowing where the drainage facilities are. Now, the city had done a great job over the past years mapping out drainage infrastructure for a lot of the public right-of-ways, the areas that they maintain. But as part of the master plan, we know that stormwater doesn't just stop at jurisdictional boundaries. It impacts private property. It goes across roads, DOT systems, county systems. So we want to put together a comprehensive mapping of all the drainage infrastructure, all the inlets, the pipes, ponds, and systems. And that's very important because knowing where the water is supposed to go and designed to go can help us when we see problems in certain areas, start to look at developing solutions. Now, this is what the model looks like. If you look like, let's see, it doesn't look too bad in here, but you see a lot of yellow lines. You see a lot of dots and blue lines. These are all how the connectivity of the drainage infrastructure works together in our computer model. So you see it's fairly detailed, covers the city, looking at the primary infrastructure in key areas where there's been some flooding problems. Now, what this map shows a little bit, if you look, is you see some red dots covered throughout the city. Those are areas where our modeling indicated that there could be a level of service problem with a particular piece of infrastructure. Now, this is zoomed way out, so we provide another version of the same map zoomed in to District 2. And so you can see here again, if you look in a picture where the red dots are, some areas were identified that there's either confirming existing problems or looking at whether it could be suspected problems with infrastructure, but these turn into areas that we can look at and evaluate improvement measures. And there's a number of them. And particularly down in the south and southeast, you can see a large concentration of red dots. There's some of those older subdivisions. And again, were designed, a lot of infrastructure put in quite a while ago, and some of it's reaching its service life. Now, next, in addition to flooding, water quality assessment was a big area we looked at. And really what we're looking here is there's a lot of regulations that the city is going to need to comply with through either their NPDES permit, which is a state permit, or with water quality regulations that are coming up. And it's important because most of the city drains, well, I think all of the city either drains to the Hillsborough River to the north, or the Intercoastal to the east, or through the Broward Water Control District and some of the lakes to the south and southwest. And it's important that that water quality is maintained for recreation purposes, for the health of the environment. And stormwater can be a big contributor to water quality issues. So looking for areas, looking for hot spots, similar to what we did in flooding, looking for opportunities to do some projects or do some programmatic things to help water quality is an important part. And again, these work into developing recommendations as part of the capital improvement program of projects. Another area we looked at is a coastal resource assessment. And this is first focused on a lot of the outfalls. As you know, if the water is working its way towards the river, towards the receiving water bodies, it has to go through outfalls, most often pipes, sometimes ditches or canals. So the condition of these pipes is key to be able to let the water out. And if there's problems with them, if they're deteriorated, if they're collapsing or failing, then it can stage water and cause flooding issues upstream. So I went through an inventory, did a conditions assessment, identified which ones may be candidates for doing some upgrades here as part of the future years of the stormwater program. Now, another interesting thing about the outfalls, another challenge the city has, is some of these outfalls are on private property, or some of them are in areas where the city doesn't have easements or rights to be able to go in there and fix them. So sometimes a lot of administration has to happen to get permission to fix some of these. And there's just some examples of some pictures, kind of a good, somewhat okay, and then one that's somewhat failing, to give you an idea of what these look like. So again, recommendations related to coastal resources worked their way into the plan as some capital project recommendations. Now, another area that we look at is regulatory compliance. As we alluded to before, there's regulatory compliance the city is responsible for, some state permits, their NPDS permit, which, as Alec mentioned, it kind of permits the city to discharge to receiving waters, but has a lot of requirements on how they need to maintain their stormwater system in order to do that responsibly for both flood control and water quality. There's also some state regulations with water quality that need to be met. So this is an opportunity to look at those, the requirements, look for opportunities for enhancement or recommendations. We also looked at the local code, the comprehensive plan, code of ordinances, the land development code, to look at areas where we could recommend some enhancements, some things that we learned around the state and different stormwater master plans to, again, help enhance stormwater and make the program more effective. We also look at floodplain management and how that works. There's a community rating service that, depending on how robust the program is, you can get increases in floodplain insurance discounts, and doing a master plan is a big part of being able to get more credit through that. So these regulatory compliance review is an important aspect, behind the scenes recommendations go forward. The last big area is really operations and maintenance. The city has to maintain all this infrastructure, and it takes significant personnel and equipment resources to do that. And that's the table here on the right indicates just a lot of the stuff they have to maintain. Over almost 3,000 stormwater inlets throughout the city they have to maintain, make sure they're clean and free from debris and operating properly. Over 45,000 feet of exfiltration systems. Those are perforated pipes that help infiltrate stormwater. So a lot that they have to do, and they need significant resources and personnel to do it. So we, again, look at this, review, provide some recommendations on an enhancement or things that may help the program be more proactive in managing the stormwater. Now, all these things together, as I mentioned, are all leading to capital project recommendations and things that do, the to-do list, the roadmap for the future, 10 years of the stormwater program. Now, some of these projects are projects that are defined enough to go directly to turning dirt, so to speak, go out there, go right to design, improve something, start constructing. Other areas are a little less defined, where we recommend some studies to look at what is the most cost-effective way to approach fixing some problems. And there's also some citywide recommendations for looking into some things, but all these work together in a program of capital project recommendations. Now, right now, as it sits with the draft master plan submitted, there's a total of nearly $19 million of needs that we've identified for the program. Now, that's a table that lists them. We also want to show this on a map, just geographically get an idea of where these projects are. This is where these projects you saw on that last table are spread out throughout the city, and they are spread out. There's the blue dots that you see on the map here are flooding project area recommendations. And the green dots are water quality recommendations, project recommendations. Now, as you can note, the water quality ones are more concentrated towards nearer to the outfalls to the receiving waters, but the flooding ones are spread throughout, including a number of them in District 2. Now, on the right is a little bit of table that breaks down just dollars wise between the districts, but also ones that are citywide that make up that total of nearly 19 million. Now, what we do through this process is not only identify the projects, figure out this is how they're going to cost, where they're at, but we also develop a plan. This is kind of the take home of the master plan, is to look at a 10-year planning period and see how these lay out in the future. Try to prioritize the projects based on different criteria. Looking at flooding, a lot of the criteria to prioritize things are, well, have houses flooded? How many people are maybe impacted or benefit from a particular project moving forward? Those kind of things work in how successful in this project doing in reducing flooding. Water quality is a little bit more tricky, but it's the same kind of thing. How much benefit can we do to water quality for a particular project? And ones with high benefit may be prioritized a little higher. And there's a few other ones that provide an annual allotment for doing things, such as doing some small area drainage studies with complaints and other things do come in, new things. There's the city needs some resources to be able to handle on the spot and look at things such as little studies, and also allotments for repairs of outfalls and such. But all this is laid out in a prioritized manner to provide this roadmap. Now, one thing we do realize is master plan is a living document. Things come up, priorities change over the years. 10 years is a long way to look out. So it's expected that there could be, for various reasons, some adjustment in this priority, but you need somewhere to start that roadmap to be able to go down the road. Now, as was talked about originally, the city was fortunate enough to be the beneficiary of some FEMA flood mitigation grant funding. And what that turned into is the opportunity to do in 4 areas, 1 project per district, really take the idea of a capital project to the next level, and not only just have it planned the way we have in this master plan as a concept, but take it to what we call a 30% design level, which is actually getting some information on plans and doing calculations to see how these work. So here on this map shows the 4 projects, 1 per district, that were recipients of this funding to be able to go ahead and take the next level, even as we're finishing the master plan now. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the Commission District 2 project, which is improvements along the MLK Avenue corridor. So the MLK Avenue corridor is one of these areas that's kind of the mix of the old and the new. There's some of the older areas. If you see here on the map on the right-hand side, the older subdivisions, you have a lot of new facilities, such as some of the city facilities and park on the left. So over time, this has kind of grown together, but what happened is there's still along MLK insufficient infrastructure to effectively convey the water to where it needs to go, keep it out of the streets, keep things safe. And particularly the Stanley Terrace housing area in particular has some history of some chronic issues. And so in addition to looking at the MLK corridor, be able to connect the dots with some more drainage thing, and also along the street by that, by Stanley Terrace and by the park, to improve the drainage to be able to get it to where it goes more effectively. And the park itself has a large pond and some conveyance infrastructure for stormwater that can be expanded to help provide an outfall for some of this. So the idea with this, if you see the orange pipe in the middle, those are areas, a mixture of new storm pipes, but also exfiltration systems that can not only convey water, get to the pond, but the exfiltration systems allow some percolation, infiltration right where it enters the ground in through the inlets. And the idea is to spread out the stormwater management to allow it to take advantage of more area for flood recovery. Now, this is the north half of MLK where we looked at, and then there's a southern half as well. Well, let me wait for the southern half real quick. One thing we wanted to also show is there's an aerial view, but also show what's going on. This is a topographical map, and this is interesting in that it shows you the way topography affects drainage. This is the same area shown by the previous map, but what you see here is the different colors or different elevations on the map. White being the highest elevation. And as you go down through the reds and the yellows, that's getting lower elevation. But these greens, particularly over by the park area, are some of the lower elevations. So you can see, if you look on the right-hand side, there's this white, kind of white capped ridge line that a lot of the water there is flowing downhill towards MLK, where it has to manage a lot of that water. And MLK itself and some of the cross streets sit at a bit of a lower elevation. So what we try to do is work with topography, work with Mother Nature, so to speak, to be able to get water effectively to the bottom of the hill. But once it's there, be able to do it in such a way that it reduces flooding. It's not standing in the streets. It's getting where it needs to go safely. Now, the southern half of MLK, we also looking at some improvements. And here at the bottom is 10th Street. And then you have the elementary school right on MLK up there. And there's some areas that just lack infrastructure. There's not a lot of pipes, not a lot of inlets going on. So you have a lot of puddling on the side of the water, on the side of the road. And in fact, on the street that you see, the lateral going across on the top, there's some low areas. There is some pipes and stuff, but it just doesn't drain effectively. So this is part of an issue where there's a lack of drainage infrastructure, and also some that is actually there is under capacity. So we're looking at trying to tie this together. The natural outfall is to try to get down to 10th Street into the system down there. So again, looking at connecting the dots with some inlets, some piping. A lot of this piping, again, exfiltration allows some infiltration to happen when it's going to its outfall. Now here, this again, this is the topographical map. You see a lot of the same colors in and around the streets. That's just indicating that it's fairly flat. It's very consistent. So the water isn't naturally flowing downhill very well. So that's where putting in more pipes and inlets to be able to get it in off the streets into the system will help to manage the stormwater more effectively. So that is the project for this district that is proposed to really focus on not only the MLK corridor, but making the peripheral streets more effective as far as drainage as well in turn. Now, so that brings us to wrap up on the presentation. So what are the next steps? We're going to finalize the master plan. Important part of these last steps is having these final 4 public meetings, getting input, because there's always good opportunities to get input. Some of that can be reflected in the master plan, the final master plan, and then at the end, we'll go to a final meeting to the commissioners to present master plan. So one of the questions we have before we go into the Q&A is, how can you provide input to the master plan? Similar to what we had in the last meetings last fall, there's comment cards. There's on this survey on the internet, which is like a virtual comment card that can be gone to provide some input. But also there's some contacts here on this slide that have the City of Deerfield's environmental services that can be called. There's a email that can be information be sent. And this can be anything, questions, new flood complaints, new areas they are having problems with, or just issues that you may have relating to flooding or stormwater. In this, there's also some resources. If you go to the city's webpage, there's general information on stormwater, some fact sheets of things going on, a copy of this presentation, and the audio recording of it will be posted on the web as well for citizens to look, and a lot of good information there to answer some questions. And I think that was the last slide. So that's I've talked a lot, and now it's time to hear from you all. I will go back to this slide that has this contact information in case folks viewing or here in the audience want to jot any of those down. But we're now at the time to hear from you.
Yes, and just to reiterate, if you have a question and you're online, if you would raise your hand and we'll unmute you so you can pose your question. If you're in the audience, please raise your hand and we'll come around with a microphone so we can capture you on the video.
And yeah, the microphone, because we are recording, so
Yeah.
appreciate using the microphone.
And I did want to just reiterate, now we applied to FEMA for Martin Luther King Boulevard because that is a known chronic problem for the city. We are aware that there are a number of different areas within District 2 that flood. One of the areas, College Park, is another area of large concern for us. We've just put together through the legislative appropriation process, we've just put together an application to request funding to do the study of the College Park area. In addition to that, Southeast 10th Street is also a known flooding concern within the city. That is something that we're trying to address also in the short term. So, these are areas that we have, a very high priority set to do some improvements. So I want to make you aware that, we're not just focusing on one project in the district. We are aware of the numerous concerns, and we have a multi-pronged approach as far as trying to seek funding through the federal and state governments and locally to fund these initiatives. Okay, I do see a raised hand. So Terry Scott, I'm going to unmute you if you would.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you. Terry Scott, 180 Southwest 3rd Avenue. I live on MLK. But I have concern also with Airwood Gibson Estate area, which is about a 60-year-old area. It is one of the oldest areas in District 2. Okay, it is one of the oldest areas in the original District 2. In that area right now floods tremendously in the neighborhoods. And this is something that has been going on let me say, as me being born and raised here, it's been going on all my life. So is that one of the main priorities along with MLK and Southwest 10th?
Yes, we can pull up a map. Actually, if you don't mind pulling up the District 2 map, and we can show there, our hydraulic modeling shows a red dot in those areas where we know the system to not be functioning. Allwood Estates, you can give me the cross street. We can zoom in.
That is third along with 5th northwest.
Northwest, yeah. That
North-
area, yeah, that area is shown as an area of high concern. And yeah, Allwood and College Park, I'm not quite sure where the dividing line is. But College Park is an area that we have as a real high priority for the city.
That's Hillsborough. That's the crossroad of Hillsborough.
Yeah, north of Hillsborough.
Yes.
Right, and that's
So, so those two areas are high concerned volume areas. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Those are on our priority list.
Okay. Now I heard you say that you're seeking grant money for MLK.
That one has already received design funds, which positions us very well to get the construction funds. So upon completion of the study, we submit that to FEMA, and then FEMA, having funded the design, is very likely to fund the construction element of the project. So these, we follow the process with the federal government, and we think we're very well positioned to receive the construction funds for these projects.
Okay, so is that in addition to the $6 million plus that is already allocated for the District 2 area?
I'm not familiar with the $6 million allocation.
I seen on one of your slides,
Oh,
I can,
that's,
I've seen the dollar amount. Here it go right here. The CIP total, and it says Commission District 2, $6.365.
yes, sir. That is an identification of need. However, we have not funded $6 million. That just identifies the current level of need.
And a dollar value.
Exactly, a dollar value that corresponds to the need.
Okay, now, so in addition to that, will you be asking FEMA for more money? Because we're already up under the stormwater giving funds. And I don't know how much of funds have already been allocated within the new budget for the storm water. Can you let us know that, please?
Yes, sir. The capital budget is published. The draft version of the FY22 capital budget is published under the Finance Department's website. If you go to the Stormwater Fund, you can see all the details of the Stormwater Fund. We receive approximately $2 million annually from the stormwater utility.
How much have you already received, may I ask?
So on an annual basis, we receive approximately $2 million, and that goes to fund our materials, our equipment, and our personnel.
Okay, have any work already been done with the storm water?
Yes.
Just the research?
Yes, in the 3 years that it's been in operation, we've implemented a number of different capital projects. These include some improvements that we made to the Kingfisher outfall for water quality. We installed a very large 12-foot diameter water quality structure to improve the water quality discharging to the Kingfisher Canal in District 1. We also improved some problem flooding that we had on Southeast 8th and 9th Terrace near 1st and 2nd Court. In addition to that, we've made a number of seawall repairs and improvements throughout the city. And we're currently working on a small drainage repair in the vicinity of Southeast 13th Avenue. So those are all drainage concerns that have been, known chronic issues and concerns from the community. We've addressed those in the short term prior to having this plan in place. Now this plan is going to guide our future programming of capital funds. That was done, very initially without the plan. And now moving forward, the plan is really what's going to be prioritizing the projects within the city.
So nothing has been done in all of the districts?
We've done spot repairs in a number of different areas within the city.
Can you tell me in the district?
Yes, sir. So let's take Northwest 3rd Avenue, for instance. Northwest 3rd Avenue near Hillsborough Tech. This area was a problem area. We had a lot of sinkholes developing over top of a 36-inch culvert. We recently had that 36-inch culvert cleaned. We identified some structural needs within there. So we've just contracted with a contractor who's going to install a slip liner into that culvert. That slip liner acts as a brand new pipe and basically replaces the old pipe with a new plastic pipe and ensures the structural integrity of that pipe. So that work is going to be happening very shortly. They've ordered the material and we're just waiting for the material to arrive.
So nothing in neighborhoods, because I'm concerned with
That is
neighborhoods.
a neighborhood. The pipe runs behind the homes
Because-
along Northwest 3rd Avenue.
I'm sorry, because I do live on Southwest 3rd Avenue, and I travel a lot in Northwest 3rd Avenue, and the flooding there is still horrendous. It is still. It has not changed any. It has not changed any in 3 years. It has not changed any in a year. And I do have a lot of concern because we have spent already $6 million by taxpayers' dollars, not talking about grants, but within taxpayers' dollars of 3 years, according to you, given every year $2 million. And for the last 3 years, according to your records, we've given $6 million. And the flooding is still the same. In the Northwest 3rd Avenue, in the Southwest 3rd Avenue, also areas of District 2, it's still pretty much the same. It has not changed.
Yes, sir. I understand what you're saying. What I'm letting you know is that those funds are appropriated for not just capital projects, they're for operations and maintenance. So, the fact is that the city employs 3 personnel for stormwater maintenance in order for us to be in compliance with our state and our federal permits and requirements of those permits. Those people are employed to ensure that our catch basins are cleaned, our pipes are cleaned, that we ensure that every 5 years we're doing a 5-year assessment of our systems and reporting that back to the county for surface water license, as well as a number of other things that we have to do on a daily basis to ensure that the system remains in operation.
So we're getting ready to hit our 5-year mark in 2023 for evaluation to say what has been done and what has not been done.
No, the 5-year license
You
is,
said we're doing it for 3 years, so
no, we do an annual report for NPDES. There's what we call an MS4 permit, and this is an annual report that we have to comply with to the state according with the Clean Waters Act. We have to provide an annual report, and we are a co-permittee with Broward County, and so we have responsibilities under that permit to do maintenance and operation activities on our system. We have to inspect 25% of our system annually. We have to clean 25% of our system annually, and we have to show the maintenance records of that. as well as a number of various other requirements for the permit. But those are just, that's at the top, right? In addition to that, we have to show that we are in compliance with individual surface water licenses every 5 years. Now, a surface water license could be for just a very small area of the city. It could be one street from one intersection to another intersection, and it would have a different license from the next intersection. It's all contingent on when the system was installed. And every 5 years, we have to do an inspection and certification to the county that it's operating in accordance with the original design. So there's a number of those requirements that we have to meet. So there's just quite a bit that our operation personnel do. If you see in our street sweeper operating at night, that's part of our water quality measures. That's to ensure that sediment doesn't get into our storm drain system. And we're trapping it before it gets to our waterways. So those are just some of the initiatives that we have in our program to ensure that we're meeting water quality measures.
Okay, thank you. I'll keep my eyes out, even the.
Thank you. Am I on? Okay. My name is Naomi Gale, 643 Northwest Third Way in Deerfield. I'm in one of those areas where the infrastructure from the pipes that are running across along the rear of our homes, between our homes and this industrial plaza that we're sitting on right now, the pipes that are going across that are actually in our yards, not in the not on the easement between the two properties. So we're having like little sinkholes or big sink. You can call them what you want. They're sinkholes. The pipes are corroding, I guess, especially in the last 3 or 4 years since this part was tied into the water that's going from the rainwater that's coming in this area and coming in the area behind our homes was tied together. I don't know if it was temporary, if it's not there anymore, if they've put new lines in for this project over here. But since that time, it caused a lot of problems behind our homes. And I've been calling for over a year to ask if someone can come back and do that, fix the problems that we have with that infrastructure problem. As a matter of fact, I was at the city commission meeting about maybe 4 months ago, and I spoke on it, and I was told something was going to be done about it. However, I have not received a call to say what has been done about it. I know it's personal, and I know you all are trying to give a outline of what you're trying to do for the entire city. But for me, the area that I'm in affects the entire city because it comes from, the drainage starts from what I'm told at Hillsborough and goes down to the canal. So that affects the entire Deerfield area between the canal and 10th. But I was told that they were going to be putting in what you call them, slip liners. And that hasn't been done yet, or someone said it was done, but it hasn't been done yet.
No, ma'am, they've just, so that I misspoke earlier when I said Northwest 3rd Avenue, I meant Northwest 3rd Way, and my apologies for that. Northwest 3rd Way is scheduled to be slip lined. The material is on back order, and this is kind of typical right now of our COVID environment. A lot of this material is just delayed and taking time. So the contractor has also been delayed because he's lost a crew. There's been a lot of issues in the industry just trying to keep personnel on. So the scheduling's been delayed significantly. We issued this purchase order back in June, and we are now in September, and I just spoke with him and he says that it's imminent. So we're hoping that it happens very shortly, but I do understand your concern, and I understand the impatience because it has taken quite a bit of
Yeah,
time.
because you issued it in June. I issued in the previous June, the concerns that we had behind our house.
Yeah, and in
And
that time we
part-
did clean and we did
Part of the
inspect.
problem is that we say something to you all and it's like you don't hear what we're saying. are, if we got sinkholes in our backyard, it is affecting what's going on under our homes. Eventually, I mean, even though it's maybe 10 or 20 feet away from the house or the homes, when that water is not going through the pipes and it's just bubbling up through the ground, it is corroding the grounds underneath our homes. And I don't understand why over a year ago, past the June that you're talking about, I have been reporting this. And one of the problems with reporting is you don't know who to report to, because you call who they say you call Stormwater, they say you call somebody else. You call somebody else, they say you call somebody else. And then you call the city and the city says, well, someone, just like you just said, you have a contractor on. And I think I've spoken to one of those contractors because I was out there and we were having a big issue.
Yes, we've done a number of repairs on Northwest Third Way. We had a few issues out in the roadway
There
where the
plenty of
crossings.
sinkholes out there. People's
Yeah,
cars
and-
were being damaged and torn up.
Yeah, and you did
because-
see where our city forces did the repairs that the city forces could do in the roadway. Now we're just waiting, as I indicated on this contractor. What they do is they basically blow up a pipe on the interior of the pipe with a new plastic insert that replaces the old pipe, and it restores the structure of that pipe. So you'll no longer have the leakage that's occurring right now that's causing the sinkholes.
Well, will someone inform us, send us a letter or something and let us know, first of all, what's going on? Because I don't think half of the people know what's going on. I just walked out in my backyard one day and I just fell in the dirt because it just went down. There was nothing there to support me. And then I looked underneath the edge of my utility room, and then there was another area of concern. So someone needs to start informing us. You all know these things are happening. The people who live along that area need to be informed that this is going on so they can be careful and not hurt themselves. And that's not happening. And we need to know when it's going to be repaired, of course. But you're talking about 6 months ago. I'm talking about a year or more ago of me constantly reporting this information. That's personal. Now, the water that's on the road on Third Way on Martin Luther King,
Mhm.
that's I think it's Ellaway and MLK. Okay,
On the north side.
on the
Mhm.
north side,
Mhm.
yes. Well, I was riding this morning when I was driving out of the community. I noticed that all the water had kind of like, again, gathered right there in that area.
Mhm.
I think, it's my personal thought, that they turned off some of the drains so that the water doesn't go down as quickly as it should or has been going down in the past years in that area. So what's being done about that particular spot? Because it's like your cars are like almost a foot underwater when you're
Yeah.
driving in that particular section.
That is an area of concern. It's been a chronic area for flooding. What we do is we just try to keep the inlet clean and the pipes cleaned as much as we can. But ultimately what that is a capacity issue. Now there's no turning on or off, it's gravity. So, water just travels
You're
along.
right, it's gravity, because I looked at I looked at Hillsborough this morning. It's much higher on Hillsborough. And then when you come down MLK to that particular area, it's much lower.
Yes,
And the streets are getting higher.
that's correct.
And that means that water is going to be settling in those places like around our homes
Yes,
because of the water has nowhere to go.
that's correct. I mean, the same way that new construction homes are required to meet base flood elevations, roadways that are constructed today are supposed to meet base flood elevation. So our arterial and our collector roadways have to be above the 100-year flood. So a lot of times that means, like, for example, with the Hillsborough Boulevard improvement project that was done, they raised the road because they raised the road above the base flood elevation. What that means is that for older areas that are lower lying, water will find its natural way to its lowest point.
causing flood areas in our communities, all of our communities.
Yeah, the intent is that they capture the stormwater that's discharged off the sides of the roads. Off to the sides, you should see catch basins, and it's intercepted before it reaches the community. So any improvement that is associated with a roadway project, they have to capture all of that water that's discharging off of that roadway and has to keep it, within their own system. So it should not discharge. But again, you do have lower lying areas and water will sheet flow to a lower, a lower elevation. It's gravity again. So, the intent is that with every improvement, the surface water discharges and is captured and is conveyed to an outfall such as the Hillsborough Canal. But the reality is, yes, when you have lower lying areas, water will settle in pond.
Good afternoon. My name is John Hall. I live at 1451 Southwest 6th Avenue off of 14th Place. I noticed you only talked about the areas north of 10th. And this particular area has been flooding I've been living in my house for 44 years. And it was flooding when I moved there. And I had several conversations. Commissioner Preston, when it was first term, he had the assistant city manager, I think, come out and they looked at this thing because he was trying to get this improvement for the Deerfield High School. And from where I live, from 14th all the way down to 15th and beyond, that water, it's ridiculous. It's not 2, it's 3 or 4 feet sometimes. People are flooding out. I had my neighbor laughing at Mr. Preston because he bought a higher truck. I said, well, he bought a higher truck so he can get through this water because he lived right around the corner. But you get a lot of promises, and over time, like she was just said, the same thing happens over and over and over.
Yeah.
Now they put a drain system down there about 20 years ago, a little over 20 years ago, and it doesn't flow to anywhere. It's just that cistern type. It just goes in it. But it was told to me at the time, this thing is going to last maybe 7 to 10 years, and the city is going to come in and they're going to repipe it, and it's going to go here or there. Nothing has happened. They used to come down with the truck every once in a while and suck all that sludge and grass that the blonde people blow in the road that flows down there. It's 3 right on the corner, 3 drains. That's how bad it was on the corner where I live, right at 14th and 14th Place and 6th Avenue. And this thing is constantly, you can't keep your grass up because the water washes your soil away. You can't do nothing, really. And that's why I said, notice you didn't talk about anything. Over there, where they built the dollar store on 14th and 5th, it's the same way as turbid. I don't know how those people live because the water be completely up to their doorway. Luckily, my house is built up on a slightly elevated hill, and it goes up the driveway and normally stops before it gets to the door. But it's you wonder when or what if anything is ever going to happen.
Yeah,
And I know that it's a problem. I've been in Deerfield since 1947. I didn't just move here, and the same problems is here now that was here then. But we didn't have any drainage system. We had a canal that ran from Second Court across by Thomas Roofing and ran completely out to US 1, and there was a canal along US 1. That was a drainage system years ago. But they came up with the supposed improvements. You close the canals up, now the water just sits.
Now so your area is right in here, if I'm following you right?
I can't see that too well. I can't tell the addresses on there, but is that the 6th Avenue
Is that about?
and 15th?
Near the high school.
Right, yeah, just
Right.
east of Deerfield High School and north of the elementary school there.
So what we did do is there was I mean, you can see all the red dots in the area. So we did identify or confirm, some of the issues that we're talking about. And one of the projects we recommended was a flooding study in that specific to that area to start to look for solutions that can later become to some project.
Quite a few people start getting, well, that was that they was in a flood zone now. It wasn't in a flood zone before, and they've had to go out and get personal engineers to come in because of the insurance company is raising up their insurance because they're putting them in this flood zone all of a sudden.
Yeah, FEMA every probably 10 years or so comes out with new maps and they never seem to go down. They always go up, right? Yeah, so that's not surprising. But yeah, there is a drainage study program for that area to be able to look and look at some capital improvements down the road to help.
Look at it.
Yeah.
The capital improvement that you're speaking of, I'm sure with this plan is going to address it. But I think we can see some of the concerns, like what Ms. Gail was talking about is actually now. And hers is a particular concern because she is, she actually was pretty generous in that she says she has, asked for assistance a lot more than she has said, and she hasn't received that. And what Deacon Hall is talking about is absolutely correct. Why? Because I live a minute away from him. So I deal with this flooding thing now. Here's the issue. The issue is that this master plan is actually addressing something that's right now not in place. The complaints that you're hearing are things that are existing. And here's what I find that is very interesting. We use the word plan here, which is great, the stormwater plan, master plan. And again, when this is implemented, I'm sure a lot of the problem will go away. But right now, for problems that he's experiencing and that she's experiencing, there is no plan. So now when there is no plan to be able to alleviate the strain, what do we do? We're left to do one thing, and that is react. That's a problem because it doesn't address the problem that he's talking about. This master plan really doesn't address that. We can say it that these are areas of concern and that we're looking at this and down the road, whenever that time frame is, and we don't really know from project start to project end when this will totally be in place. I mean, we're talking, years down the road here. But like Ms. Gail problem, I mean, if we continue to have big issues, the sinkhole that she's talking about affects the structural integrity of her home. I mean, something could really happen. Problem is, again, our city have no plan to be able to deal with the now problems. And to me, that's an issue, and that what we need to actually address. I'm sure a lot of people think when they hear stormwater master plan that these will be ideas that could be phased in basically immediately to alleviate their strain, but that's not what this is. This is a whole look holistically of our city, identifying districts and where we've had study, but we need to do something. Something needs to happen for people who are having immediate strain. Her problem needs to go away. Our problem needs to, where we live over there, it needs to go away. But again, the only thing that we can do is react. There's some areas, as you are well aware of, Priscilla, over in District 1, where you look at a fire hydrant and the water is peaking at the top of that fire. That's a problem. Going into people's home, they talk to us about the destruction. And again, we have no plan. I'd like to suggest that we begin to think of, I wouldn't want to say an emergency plan, but we call it whatever you want to call it, some sort of a plan that when we hear of of challenges like Mrs. Gale is experiencing, that we can address that and say, now I just heard that something is supposed to happen in that situation. Relatively, yeah, okay, relatively soon. But like situations in District 1 where the water is almost over the hydrant, what Deacon Hall was just talking about in our area. And he's right. The elevation of my truck does help me a little bit. So, but he's right. It just floods over there, and we're at the mercy of the elements. You know, does it rain for 3 or 4 days? But no matter how bad it gets, we can't get any relief. You know, I'm for implementing, you know, some sort of a plan to be able to significantly deal with these issues when something happens.
I wish there were a switch where we could just shut something off and stop the flooding, but that's not the reality. These are multi-million-dollar solutions to problems, okay? The issues that we have when we have flooding, it takes a huge investment to fix those problems. And that is why we have a stormwater master plan, because what it is it's intended to prioritize our improvements citywide, looking at it on a global scale throughout the city and assess who's got the greatest risk and where the best use of public dollars will go to solving the problems, okay? So this is the plan. This is the plan that's going to help guide our decision-making process so we can allocate the funds appropriately, because the solution is not simple. I can't send 8 trucks out and dewater a location. It's not happening. I mean, when you have a huge storm event, you have as much water as you have coming through, you know, that water needs a place to go. Okay, so it's not a matter of throwing personnel or throwing trucks and trying to, you know, stop the fire. You know, you can't firefight a stormwater solution. The only solution is infrastructure, and infrastructure is very expensive. And so that's the purpose of tonight, and that's the purpose of this plan.
And I just want really quick, I also want to add that one of the important parts about this is that the model that Geosyntec and the team has developed can be used as a living model. So ultimately, as development happens, as other infrastructure happens, you can update the model and see how that impacts stormwater. And so what that allows you to do is, okay, there's a new development coming in, or there's a new roadway that needs to be elevated. You can look at what that impact might be and start thinking about solutions as part of other infrastructure projects. And so it's really a tool for the city to start thinking about projects holistically and in a way that's really forward thinking.
I do have a resident who's had their hand up for quite some time. When the clerk reads.
Yes. Good evening. Gwen Clark Reed, 1430 Southwest 6th Way, Deerfield. When we talk about planning, is there any plan in place to clean out the sewers, to send those trucks around on a plan of cleaning out the sewer drains? Because I've had problems where I've had the sewer, when the water table is very high, I have sewer rats coming up in one of my bathrooms. And I really think that when they come out, when I do call and you come out and you clean out the manholes and whatnot, I don't have that problem. I don't know if any of my other neighbors, if Commissioner Preston or anybody else or Mr. Hall has been having that same problem, but I have had a problem where the sewer rats have come up into my toilet in one of my bathrooms. So, and as I said, when I call and they come and they clean out the manhole, I haven't had that problem for quite a while. So is there a program where they will go around and just clean out the sewers on a planned basis? You know, maybe that would help with keeping some of the flooding out. And yes, the flooding at 15th and 6th in the south part of this district is terrible. It's horrendous. I have seen little cars, those Mini Coopers, floating in that water people have gotten stuck there. Also, when we are having these new zonings for pieces of property and we're getting these developments built, how are you handling this stormwater? Are they paying into the stormwater fee? And how does that work?
Yes, ma'am. So a few things. Part of our NPDES, to answer your first question on our maintenance and our operations, part of our NPDES requires that we maintain a minimum of 25% of our stormwater infrastructure annually. So that is a metric that we meet on an annual basis. Is a quarter of the city's infrastructure is being maintained on an annual basis, and we maintain the whole city over the course of the 4 years. Now, if you have a particular location that is problematic, you can call us and we can service that area with a little more frequency on an as demanded, basis. So if you make us aware of that location, we can send our trucks out with a little more frequency and target those problem areas. Your second question with regards to development. So the city has very stringent code requirements for stormwater. Every development is required to meet the 25-year 3-day storm, and they cannot discharge they cannot discharge beyond their site a 25-year storm, and that's to negate adverse impact to the neighbors. Okay, so they're required to retain that storm on site. In addition to that, the value of this plan is it has now identified those areas throughout the city that have deficiencies. So when developers do come in, we can make them aware of what our public right-of-way improvement needs are, and we can make that a condition of development. And we're doing that more and more with the new development that has come in. We've identified that we have deficiencies in our infrastructure and the public rights-of-way, and we have requested of the developer to bring certain elements of our public right-of-way up to code. So those are things that happen with new infrastructure and new development. Did I answer your questions, or was there one other?
No, you basically answered the questions, but I know that the area that Deerfield annexed in is Broward County still contributing funds towards bringing that up, because I see a lot of red down in that area. So is Broward County participating? Because this was going on when that was unincorporated Broward. So I don't know why Deerfield has to stand, the whole bill of fixing up that area. Is the county contributing?
Every homeowner within the city of Deerfield Beach contributes to the utility fund. So every homeowner within the city of Deerfield Beach is contributing. So all of those annex areas are part of the utility fee fund.
But that wasn't my question. My question was, are there funds coming from the county to help with the needs of that area? Because that area did belong to them at one time.
No, we received, with the annexation, we received the benefit of the tax dollars from those properties that were adjoined to the city. As part of the utility fee, we assess every homeowner within the city of Deerfield Beach and every industry and business as well.
Thank you.
Additional questions here? Any more online?
I just hope that everyone here is on the same page, because I understand exactly what this presentation is about. This presentation is infrastructure, but long-term. But what you've heard tonight is, nothing short-term. See, that still in and of itself presents itself as an issue. It's we need to think about something. This is actually separate from what I've been hearing from concerns from some of the residents. This is completely separate. This is long range to address stormwater problems in the city of Deerfield Beach in areas that have been studied and identified as problem areas. But what you've heard tonight is something completely different.
If I may, to act, do the city manager receive this report? Does the city manager receive this report from you all?
Yes, sir. He will be receiving it.
Because the residents really need, because we have no vision right now. There is no vision for all of this that is going on, infrastructure that is going on with this stormwater. And we, the residents, we need a vision for this. We need a cohesive vision for this right here. Because you're telling me that every resident is paying tax, is putting in, but we're getting nothing from it. Because our water drainage problem is still a problem. And that's been from the time you have started to the present time now. Because again, as Commissioner Preston has said, we have heard the bigger picture, but we haven't heard where the small man is going to get what is really needed. Because if we get a storm within the next 4 weeks, we back again. If we get a heavy downpour, we're back again. Nothing is being eased for us. So I think you all need to take back to our city manager that he needs to come up with a vision. So we, the people, don't perish in all of this.
Mr. Scott, I'm actually here this evening. So I not only do I receive this information, but I attend these workshops, and I appreciate your feedback. What I will tell you is that I disagree with you. I think that this presents to you in a very, very strategic way the vision of how the city plans to approach its stormwater needs over the next 10 to 15 years. That is exactly what we are doing here. And to say that there is nothing going on in the city today to approach our stormwater needs is incorrect. We talked about what we're doing over on 3rd. However, that's not complete, and we're waiting on a contractor. We talked about the design of MLK, which is ongoing. That is the project that the city has chosen to make the priority based on need to address the stormwater issues in District 2. One project from each district as a priority based off of need. And the MLK project is that priority. That is in design. We seeked funding for it. And as we said, we believe that with that design, we will have a good opportunity to receive construction funding for it. Aside from those efforts, there are ongoing efforts every day throughout the entire city to maintain the stormwater infrastructure. What I can tell you wholeheartedly and known for a fact is that the crews within our stormwater division are very proactive when we know that we're going to get heavy rains to go out to the areas where they know that there is flooding on a regular basis, and they clean the catch basins. They ensure to the best of their ability that there are no debris that will hopefully cover up those catch basins and prevent the infiltration of the water into that storm drain system. So the vision is this plan right here. And in the short term, there are projects ongoing and projects in design and regular maintenance and operation occurring every day. As Priscilla Sejelnik said, these projects each are multi-million-dollar projects. The fact that the city commission just 3 short years ago did what I would feel is the right thing to put in a stormwater program and a funding mechanism for it was an excellent effort by the city commission to recognize the need and also by funding this particular master plan, which will show us the long-term needs that we need to both address short-term and long-term. That's the plan based on priority and based off severity of the situation in various areas through our city. As you heard Commissioner Preston say, there are some areas where when we receive flooding, we get water as high as a fire hydrant. That is another area in a different district, which is now a #1 priority, just like MLK. So I hope that that gives a little bit of background into what we are doing and to explain to you that this Stormwater Master Plan is the actual vision for the program. The next phase will be to identify how we're going to attack all of this, not only from a timeline perspective, but from a funding perspective. But that'll be a conversation to have with the city commission at the appropriate time.
Mr. City Manager, David Santucci, Gwen Clark Reed. I heard what you said about sending out the crews when you know that a storm is imminent. But can't there be some kind of schedule made where the crews go out periodically throughout the city and clean out these catch basins? And also, I noticed that I was watching a program, and in Miami, they have put up some kind of screening around their catch basins that does not allow debris to really enter the system. So have we looked at doing those types of things here in the city of Deerfield?
Ms. Clark, I'm not familiar with that particular technology, but I'm sure these gentlemen may be, as they are experts in their field, as well as Priscilla Sejelnik. So we'd have to look at what that is. But what I can tell you is part of the maintenance requirement for our permitting is regular inspection and cleaning of our catch basins. So they do that on a regular schedule throughout the entire city.
On this cleaning, like I said before, they used to clean, like it's just like Mr. Reed said, they used to clean those things pretty on a regular schedule. They used to come by with that sweeper truck. Like my house sits at an angle. My bedroom window is less than 50 feet from the setback on the road, and you can't come through there with that cleaner truck or that sweeper unless I hear them. I haven't seen that sweeper truck in maybe 2 years come down, but it was about once a week you can hear it, maybe 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, but it will come by. That truck that they cleans it out with the suction, it used to come by maybe every 2 months, every quarter, and especially just before they think we were going to get a heavy rain. You don't see those up there anymore. And it's like that when it flood, when that water comes now, all of that trash that's already in there bubbles back up to the top. I could go out there the day after a good rain and get a whole big garbage can full of sediment. Nobody comes through and clean or do anything, you know. And it's hard on the people that lives over in that area to have to go out there and do that because that stuff is heavy. It's wet, it's heavy. But there's no system. That's what she's trying to say. Have a regular system where at least clean them, and maybe they will work better. That's exactly what Mr. Reed was speaking of.
And yes, sir, and we do have the regular sweepings and the regular VACCON.
Not in my area.
Yeah,
I can
so
tell you.
I'll follow up with my field crews in the morning and I'll find out, when we can be out there again in the near future. And anytime you have a concern and you haven't seen them around, feel free to make contact with our office and we will schedule that
You
cleaning and
just get
inspection.
tired of calling. And like you said, talk to one person, they'll tell you to talk to somebody
No,
else.
but just call 480-4400, that number each time, and the front desk will take down the address and location, and we'll make sure we get somebody
Okay.
dispatched to the site to make sure it, it's cleaned out.
We'll see what happens.
We do hit 25% of the city annually, but like I said, on an as-needed basis, if people make requests, we will send a crew out to immediately address the area.
Okay. Okay.
That's true. He can just.
I think what I'm more concerned about is like, we need preventive maintenance in the areas where we already live. We already live here, we're paying taxes. And the areas that we live in, the city needs to make arrangements for preventive maintenance. How many of you guys that are doing this project actually live in the city of Deerfield? Raise your hand. I mean, I'm sure it's not gonna be that way where you live. And some of the drains that Mr. Hall was talking about, like there's a drain behind my sister's house where the fence is falling down because of the piping, the sinkholes. If someone would just go out there and level the dirt off to the area of the road where the water comes, the water can go into the drain. The water can't even go to the drain. So what do you call someone coming out to do the job? We need preventive maintenance. We need things like that to be looked at on a regular basis, where you make sure that the water is going to drain into the drain pipes that you do have out there, or the drain systems you do have out there. I haven't seen that. And like Mr. Hall said about the cleaning truck that used to come by all the time. I've seen it once in the last 2 years go by my house, and I've been home because I'm retired.
Mr. Scott?
And while we're waiting, we did put back up the Survey Monkey, so we would encourage you, if you have specific comments, you can fill this out. All of these comments will be taken and given directly to Priscilla. So if there are specific ongoing maintenance issues, we will provide them directly to the city. You can provide your address and any details, and all of this will be sent directly in the short term.
Yes, and all the information that goes in these comments, similar to what we did the meetings last fall, are incorporated with this master plan document and documented there as well. So.
Mr. Scott?
Yes, and I'm sorry, we was having some technical difficulties. To the city manager, I didn't know he was sitting in the audience, but if you hear, Mr. City Manager, what these citizens and these residents are saying, there is no vision. And Mr. Manager, if I could please set up a schedule where I can meet with you, and then we can get your vision for this city. And as Naomi just said, that if we had folks such as yourself, Mr. Manager, living within the city, then you can really understand the need. You could understand the very need of these residents, because then you would know what we're going through. We're just not complaining, but we're really going through something. And this has not just been now, Mr. Manager. This has been since all of your predecessors. So we're only saying that we're tired of going through it. And we're just going round and round like a dog running behind his own tail. So all we're trying to do is be a part of the process and ask that you all would please hear us. Because we live here in this city. We live in the city of Deerfield. So we need help. And all we're asking is that you all listen to us and give us the help that we are in need of. And we're just not fighting for District 2. We're fighting for the entire city. But more especially, I have concern for District 2.
Thank you for the comment.
Thank you very much. And that is very much the purpose of tonight, was to receive the community input. We love to hear the passion of our residents, and we definitely will include all of this commentary in our master plan. Again, as I indicated, it's a living document. So as concerns come in, it does get added to our flood list and our concerns, and we prioritize those improvements on an as needed basis. Again, our resources are very limited. And we are seeking additional resources. This plan helps us get additional grant opportunities. Tonight in the audience, I have Anisha Nichols, who helps us find these grant dollars that are available to us through state and federal appropriation. And she's a critical part of that process of finding those grant dollars to help us achieve the goals of the city. We all have a shared desire to see that the city is successful and that our residents have a safe environment, and that is our main concern, is your public welfare. So do understand that this is a shared goal amongst all of us. That is the goal of this plan, and that is the hopeful attainment of the goal as we implement the plan.
I would like to thank the presenters, Priscilla, and like to thank you guys for sharing, the master plan. Really appreciate it. Like to thank all of the residents that physically showed up and those that were online. And as you can see, this is about identifying issues within our city, some that need to be more immediately addressed, as well as on a long range basis. But how do we find solutions to any of these things? And the answer is communication, dialogue. These kinds of conversations are essential to being able to build a better city. And as we go forward, I think it's essential to also understand that the citizens, those residents, the ones that pay taxes, that ask for relief, is a part of the process, a part of the team. And I think if we all presents ourselves as team builders, we can actually find solution to issues. So thank you all for coming out tonight, and we really appreciate it. And we'll definitely be talking more about this. Have safe travels home. Thank you. Meeting is adjourned.